All right, guys, welcome to the Leadership to Wealth podcast. We've got a special treat for you today. He was born, I guess today was born in British Guyana in South America and lives in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. During the last 5 decades, he's made a name for himself as an illustrator, in theater, and product designer. He's worked closely with Olympians in costume design and brides wishing to be adorned with his magnificent creations on their wedding day. He takes special care for each and every one of them and each and every detail of their dresses. And all the while, this force in design has been teaching and training people how to design their life through personal development and leadership. He considers it a blessing to make a difference in people's lives. He is my friend and joins us on the show today to discuss being a leader in your own life. Peter DeFreitas. Peter, glad to have you on today.
Wow, what a pleasure. What an intro.
Well,
I
I
like
wasn't.
I like the sound
Yeah.
of me.
Yeah. Well, uh, if I fully created who you are for me with everybody, I'd still be going. So, because there are, and one of the great things about our conversation today is about our, being a leader in our own lives. And you've been integral in some pretty major events for me in the past number of months. And as I've gone through some pretty significant stuff in my own life, my own family. And so I'm glad to really be able to share you with our guests and with the world. I know that you've done obviously other interviews and stuff, but it really is a pleasure for me to be able to talk like this. I know we get to do it on the phone, but I think it'll be really exciting for people to be able to hear some of your thoughts, insights, just on being me, on being a person in this thing we call life.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, right? Thank you for that. And this is actually my second interview talking about this like this. So this is as much for me as it is for you, because I haven't got a clue what's going to come out of this mouth and what's going to come out of this conversation. And I know that in listening back on it, I'm going to be like, wow, that was cool. I just know that. I just know that it will be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. And you have done another interview, and it's something interesting I want to share, because the first time I remember meeting you, and I'm just putting this out there, your voice completely threw me off. I was like, who's this guy with this soft, gentle voice? It feels like he's whispering in my ear. And for me over here, I had a whole lot of judgment about it. And it's interesting because that has been so wrong. And I've loved it being wrong. And then of course, I actually, I don't know about the soft voice, because I've heard you use all different tones, but it's
Good.
interesting to me to
Good.
take notice that there was something over here for me about that gentle voice. So I don't know what it was. Anyways, I'm just sharing that.
Yeah. That's my dad.
Oh,
That's my dad. Yeah. My dad had a quiet voice. He
yeah.
wasn't one much for yelling and screaming, or at least that's not how he was with us as kids. My mother took care of that. My mother made up for all of the softness and the gentleness that he brought
Yeah.
forth. But yeah, no, that's my dad. And it's funny. I always had an issue with my voice. I always had an issue with my dad. And as I got older and I got to really see that I'm a lot like him, and I could embrace it. I could embrace it, and have it sort of work for me, because he had a way. He had a way with people. People really
Yeah.
enjoyed being around him because of how he spoke and how he was and how he be.
That is so interesting, because of course I'm thinking about growing up, my dad normally, he either had a pretty gentle tone, he would say something very matter of factly, and he didn't use a lot of words, or he would be the opposite, and whatever words he started using, they were with force, and you knew you better move because real force was coming next.
Mm.
And then there was my mom who, you know, even when she's being gentle, she is still fairly loud. So that's interesting. Maybe that's part of what I was used to. But it's an interesting insight. See, guys, right off the bat, we're getting right into it. You can't help but, when you're talking to Mr. DeFreitas here,
Wow.
get a mirror put in front of you.
Mr. DeFreitas here. I got present to
Yes.
my dad. That's because my dad was Mr. DeFreitas. I now really, relate to myself as Mr. DeFreitas. I'm Peter, but that's great.
One of the reasons I wanted to have Peter on the show is because the number of insights I've had into my own character, my own thought processes, my decision making has really made a massive difference for me in my business, in dealing with investors, dealing with clients, dealing with team members, all of this. It's made a massive difference, and I think that there is wisdom in understanding. It's not always about the techniques in business. It's not always about having the best marketing and all of these things. Sometimes the roadblock, shall we say, and I'm perhaps, Peter, you've got something to say about this. Sometimes the roadblocks, or most of the roadblocks, are with us and not out there with people at all.
That's interesting. Food for thought. I am. Well, let's see where it goes. Let's see where that
Okay.
goes. If I were to just take what you said and look at it for myself, if the roadblocks were with me and I look at my career and I look at the successes that I've had, and I've been very successful in my career, it's not always given me what I thought I wanted, but it always gave me what I needed. And I can see that looking back on it all, it's always been me that's been in the way. They all of the people I worked with, they were all waiting for me to bring what I could bring. But it was always me that was a little bit concerned about, is what I'm bringing too much? Is it not enough? Is something wrong with it? Like that. So I can see how I maybe was the hurdle in some of that. Is that kind of what you were pointing to?
Oh, I'm just thinking,
Who
yeah, who
knows?
knows? But as you're saying it back, I'm just hearing it and thinking, that is interesting, because even with how I got into real estate investing, the biggest hurdle was not the details, it was not the knowledge. The biggest hurdle was getting over myself, my own fears, my own doubts on, could I do this? Could I, how was I going to mess it up? All of these things. The and that was actually one of the interesting things, because I had all this knowledge that I had built up in studying, and I realized, okay, I've actually studied, I think, more than I needed to to do what I was looking to do. I was ready to start Donald Trump's empire, never mind my own. And so once I was faced with that, it came real clear that all that was left was to address the stuff that was going on inside of
Uh-huh.
me, because there was no longer any like facts that were going to make a change with that. I had all the facts, I had everything to make a decision. So now all that I was left with was making a decision. And it's something interesting is throughout my life, I have continued to grow in this ability to make decisions. And I had a great fear when I was younger of I didn't want to live my life with the regret of not making a decision.
Mm.
I I've and I've only grown in that desire to I'd rather make a bad decision than make no decision.
So,
And
so then you've been successful.
I've I've been I've been successful. I would say I've been successful even in the failure,
Yeah,
because that
but it
was success.
what you wanted to accomplish was to make decisions,
Yeah,
like to not sort of stall, but to make decisions. Sometimes they were great ones, I'm sure, and sometimes they might not have been. But
yeah,
you were successful in that you kept making decisions. You
yeah,
fulfilled on that.
yeah. Now here's something. Maybe you could say something about this. I've found the greatest successes that I've had are my failures.
Mhm.
They literally are, I don't speak much about my successes, but being able to talk about the failures is the best part of my day, every day. Talking with people, especially when you're talking to someone else that is afraid of making a decision, and you get to share this time when you messed everything up, and because you get to show that you came out on the other side. So I don't know what that says about anything, but can you say something about that?
Well, Neil, honestly, I think I have a hard time figuring out what were the failures. I don't know if it's because I don't want to
Yeah.
come cough it up, right? Or it's like, or did I relate to it like failures? Yes, there were failures. There's a failure I had in telling my CEO that I didn't think this was the last, the corporate job that I had, that this was the last leadership career I had. Like that, I wanted to do something bigger. And and I didn't think it was going to be within the company. Like that was a failure because she got concerned and we had to create something. And there was a lot of bumping up against each other's stuff. But I look back at it, it was like, no, it wasn't a failure because I probably not the best thing to go do and talk to corporate, to your
Mm.
VP that, you don't think this is your last career. But it wasn't a failure in that I was authentic about it. I had to, it was there for me to say. I didn't know any better at the time. You don't do that, and I didn't find that out until later.
Right.
But in the end, what was so perfect about it was that it started us looking at creating a succession plan. And that was for my position, but it was for all the other designer positions that, she was accountable for. And we really started looking at, well, we need to hire some younger people to kind of train them and have them fulfill on us who will eventually leave.
Hmm.
So it might have been a failure to have exposed myself that way, but and it was uncomfortable and there was consequences to it for months to follow. But in the end, it had everybody win.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an, uh, I would say that my relationship to failure has changed.
Mm,
For a lot of people, that
mm,
word really means something, perhaps drastic, something
mm,
painful. And it's interesting because it's not that it doesn't mean that for me, but it means something more, and it means something more to me, because it's like every great war movie when that general or somebody stands up and calls for everybody to be brave and to go forward. Every moment like that, going through those failures is sort of like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that until you come out on the other end.
Yeah, I think that is a really important thing to remember and keep in place, because it some of it often feels familiar. Oh, I've been here before. Why am I going through this again? Why are we why does this never seem to like change or something? Like this feels familiar. But the great thing about that now is, oh, this feels familiar. I've been here before. Yes, it's uncomfortable. It's not the result I want, but this too shall pass.
Mhm.
This too I will, see something about. And I think the older I've become, or the wiser I've become, or the more failures that I've had, the more I see this is just part of the design of it. This isn't the end that it failed. No, there's something still to unfold. And
Yeah,
that's really the beauty of it. I
yeah,
don't know if that's something that comes more with age or the willingness to have failure be part of
yeah,
growing.
yeah. I do think that just by getting older, you by de facto go through more things,
Mhm,
have more failures. That just
mhm,
happens.
mhm.
If you're lucky enough, you'll put yourself through those opportunities more often when you're younger, and
Younger.
you
Yeah.
you increase your ability to grow in your wisdom. Um,
Very
I,
much so.
I've got to ask you something about this because you've at this point you've taught thousands of people in this area of personal development and taking ownership of your life in these types of courses. I've got a well at least hundreds, if not thousands.
Hundreds probably is more
Okay,
accurate, I think. I
okay,
notice I found myself now, and you say taught, like in this role as a wisdom course leader, yes, hundreds of people, but I can really see there's thousands of people in my career that I have at some point or other empowered their leadership, empowered their looking,
yeah.
right? So
So, okay,
thousands, yes, and hundreds more.
can you say something more about that? You just said they're looking. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know that I always had distinguished it quite like they're looking, but kind of like pointing towards something, like even if it was something that I wanted to, even if it was something that I wanted to accomplish. So in the design world, I would have to present a collection. The collection would be either first on illustration and paper and like that. And I would have to point them in a particular direction as to where we were going and create that for them. It's actually how all of the jobs that I ever got in designing was a function of my illustrating. Most of the designers I worked with didn't have that capacity, and that's what got me in the door. And so the illustrating came out of conversations that I had with them, and it pointed towards where we could go before we actually had to make the garments. So I've always been doing this, sketching it up, talking about it, creating it. Maybe that's why I do it so quietly. It's like to pull you in. Like, what if we did this and we created that, and this is the feeling of
Yeah,
it, and it like
yeah,
that kind of thing. So it's it's not just to get my idea across, but it's to enroll you and to pull you into it so that then you can see what there is for you to see. And then perhaps we see something together and we move forward towards that. That's in the world of design. But I think even as you and I speak, you ask me a question and, I'll sort of point you towards this and we look at that. And then you hear something and then you point me and like, well, look at this. And then it just keeps going like that. I'm interested in that. I find that really interesting, even with the brides. Like, it's not here. This is the dress I want. No, it's not so much that. It's like, what do you want to feel like? What do you want the whole day to be like? What do you want? What do you? This is your day. What do you want people to experience when they look at you? And then we start to carve away at that in language and speaking and in imagery in our heads. And then I can put it down on paper and then there I can turn it into something tangible. That is me looking with them, pointing in some direction that we're both going. I don't necessarily know where it's going to end up and what it will be until it's actually completed. And I think that's so joyful. That's the joyful part for me. Much like this conversation.
Yeah. And right now I'm even trying to follow where are you pointing. And I'm sitting here thinking you're pointing it's interesting because you're sort of the one teaching or coordinating, you're interacting with the person, and what I'm hearing from you is part of your leadership is going with them and helping them to point to whatever it is
Yeah. See,
for them.
yeah, yeah. See, Neil, it's kind of like this. It's like I have everything I need. I have an extraordinary life. I have love in my life. I have money. I have, whatever I have. I have the things that I have. And what what gives me more life is now exploring what is it to want what others want.
Okay.
Like, can I want what you want? Like just for that, just for the joy of wanting what you want. That would mean you and I would have to have conversations about, well, what do you want? Like, what do you want now? And what do you want now? And you're free to want all the whatever you want, and you're free to want what you want now and change your mind. And
Whoa, you just said some crazy words there. Okay.
and and that gives us a kind of a particular kind of relationship, right? Like there's something interesting about that relationship because, oh, and there are times I want you to do some things for sure, but then I have to kind of catch myself. Is that me just wanting what I want? Or, do I want him to go this way or that way? But the moment I can catch myself and return to wanting what you want, then I get to go wherever you want to go and we get to explore these things together.
Yeah. And that really gives it a whole life of its own, that for you wanting to be in those kind of conversations,
It
helping
moves,
people.
it moves me.
Yes.
I don't know why it moves me. It's just,
Yeah.
it moves me.
Yeah. I was sitting over here being really callous as I noticed
No,
you're
no
brought to
Kleenex.
tears. Yeah, you brought to tears with no Kleenex, and I'm like, wow, I what moves me like that? And I know my kids have that ability, or when I see them hurt, although they're not quite kids anymore, but there's something there, and I I'm a little intimidated by your ability to be that free with not free, like that connected to sort of purpose, if I can put it that way.
Mm. It's great. Thank you for putting it like purpose because as you were creating what you were creating, I looked to see like, did I just start doing this? Is this something I've always like dressing someone, right? Which is kind of where it sort of started and where most of it's like dressing them up, dressing up my mother when I learned to sew, dressing up my sisters,
Yeah.
like dressing them up.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted what they wanted. They wanted to feel
Yeah.
something. They wanted me to do that. And so I did that. So it was like I think there's been this always I can see now this conversation that what that wanting really is to connect with
Mhm.
people. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So the best way I can connect with you is to want what you want because I know and have an experience of what it's like to try to force something on someone that maybe they
Mhm.
don't want. And that's not really connection. So, even let's say in business, right? It's like sometimes that bride wants a particular something and it's like it's not happening. Like it's not something's not
Yeah.
connecting, or they
Yeah.
want it to be a particular price and it's
Yeah.
not going to happen that way. And it's like, do I stop wanting what they want? No, but we really look to see like, is this really what you want? Is this really what you want? And sometimes no. I just recently had a bride and I, there was a particular price she wanted to work inside of, and I did what I could to see if I could work inside of that price. And I came as close as I could, but it wasn't quite the same. And she was very clear that that was the price. And so we didn't go there together. And,
Mhm.
um, and yet she said, thank you for like just the looking together because she got so much about what it was she was got really clear about what she wanted and what she didn't want. And she
Mhm.
wouldn't have been so clear before. And
Yeah.
great, great experience. I
Yeah.
know a part of me in the past might have done it anyway and then resented it. You know what I mean?
Well, if I could draw a comparison to my world in
Mhm.
business, what I what it really draws me into is getting to this point where I stop trying to get people in the sense of, you know, um, trying to make them understand what I think
Yeah.
they should understand. Uh, in the world of investing, in this world of real estate, in this world of business, and being a lot, especially because I'm always developing partnerships. I'm always developing relationships with people that want to invest, want to be lenders, want to be business, all of these types of things. And what I have gotten out of that is it's so much more fun when you talk to someone and you just understand, hey, is this something
Hmm.
of interest to you? And as
Hmm.
opposed to trying to
Hmm.
make someone come aboard. Because oftentimes the people that you try to make come aboard, you end up having to keep making them stay aboard. And it's so much more friction as opposed to, you know, finding the people that you talk to them. And if there's a synergy there, just by sharing what's there, if they're
Yes.
interested,
Yes.
great. Let's go along, as opposed to trying to make people come on board to
It's
whatever it is
it's
that you're
like
working on.
finding out what they want and wanting that.
Yeah. Well, I almost look at it like, and this is especially for me as when I'm speaking to investors, it's here's what I do. And what is it that actually I don't even talk about what I do just yet. What is it that you want? What is it you're trying to do? And in your life,
Mhm.
what is it? What's important to you in terms of investing, real estate, making money? Because this leadership to wealth, building your wealth. What is that for you? What does that look like? And then, I from that, I know where I can play a
Yes.
role in that. And then I can offer that to them. And if that's interesting to them, then we continue to have those conversations. If it's not, maybe I can refer them to somebody else. I can, that's sort of my mindset. But I find so many people are out there, especially when they're new into the world of business and entrepreneurship. I find that they're trying to convince everybody, and as a result, there's this like force of what we call rejection, and they're always feeling like they're getting knocked back, and they get tired, and I can't, I'm saying the wrong
Yes.
words. We get very self-critical.
One of the things that I was hearing as you were speaking were all those times where I did contort myself to try to make something work, and they, like it wasn't like a flow. There was like me trying to get, and then we completed what we did, but the experience of it was kind of unfulfilling, and it was kind of like a fail.
Yes.
It was a fail. Like there
Yes.
wasn't the joy that would naturally be there in that flow. And, being able to identify that as it's going on, it's like, oh, something's just not flowing here.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing to be able to like have a capacity to do.
It's like that forcing. I've been in conversations with someone, and somewhere in the conversation, it hits me. Am I trying to convince them? I'm trying to convince them. I'm not in the convincing business. Let's get out of this. And at that point, it just allows me to completely pull back.
It's like in that moment, you can autocorrect.
Yeah.
It's like the best when you catch it.
Yeah. Well, I wrote it down here. You said earlier about the ability to change your mind. And I said those dirty words because I've found so often people have this desire to, they've come up with a thought, a modality of thinking that they don't want to give up. And they try to frame everything around that. And, I think exactly what I'm talking about, right? They try to fit everything around that. And as opposed to maybe looking back and going, okay, maybe I made that decision at that point. But now, those three dirty little words, maybe now I can change my mind.
It's one of the capacities we have as human beings that I think is so extraordinary.
Which one? The one to be stubborn and stick with it, or the one to change your mind?
Well, just like look at that in your life, right? What was life like when you were like stubborn and sticking with it versus when you were able to just free yourself up and change your mind? Look over here. Look at another perspective.
I have to say something about that because I was literally in this conversation with my brother 2 days ago. So my brother, he's talking about stubborn, and as we talk about, changing your mind, that word for me growing up was, I'm stubborn, and which sort of meant something like I'm not open to change, I'm ignorant, I'm a donkey. Now it turns out I am. It turns out I am. But what I was able to switch later on was to actually look at that word stubborn and realize stubbornness is what gives me the ability to get into something, and when it's difficult, be able to still move through it sometimes. And so maybe that isn't a bad word, considering that donkeys, mules are typically the animal that you use to carry the heaviest of burdens.
Headstrong.
Right?
Yeah.
Strong-willed. And so when I started changing that around and taking that, instead of Superman, that S was stubborn man. And it allowed me to get into stuff. And when things got difficult, I was like, hey, this is my superpower. let's go. I don't need to stop now. And so that was a little bit of reframing, and
Mm.
that happened because I realized, okay, that's what she said, my mom said to me at that point in time, and maybe that trait can be used in a different way. And
Well, and I think too, as you go through life and you develop stubborn a little bit more and you finesse it a little bit more, some of it is very useful. Some of it
yeah,
is really important to have,
yeah,
like that you stick with something and that you're
yeah,
committed to something. Like all of that
yeah,
is part of stubbornness.
yeah.
So, you've, and it, like anything, it has a limit,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Well, I mean, every real estate professional, like a real estate investor, especially, or any investor for that matter, knows that you are going to run into some walls. You're going to run into some obstacles, and you have to set your will to get through those things. You've got to do them.
mhm.
It may be difficult, and you can keep moving forward. And that's just a reality, and it's one of the things that separate you from other people that aren't willing to do that or deal with that. Now, I associated myself with a comic book character called Juggernaut, who, always goes through walls. You can't stop him. The unstoppable force. He's a juggernaut. And so I somewhere along the way took that on and said, I'm a juggernaut.
It's awesome.
And then I realized somewhere along the way, in the last number of years, I noticed something, and it's only been in about the last 3 years that I started thinking, maybe I don't need to be a juggernaut, because every time I'm a juggernaut, isn't it amazing that a wall shows up for me to run through? Maybe, maybe I could take the door 3 feet to the right. And so I've started creating that, and it's amazing. In our discussions last year, as we started learning, you know, of course, we discussed a little bit about the explosion that I had at the end of the year with this idea that you like to talk about fun, play, and ease, and having ease. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Where's all this money coming from? And I've been a juggernaut all these years, and lo and behold, with a little bit of ease, there was something like floodgates opening.
Beautiful. You're never stuck with Juggernaut.
Yes. Yes. Is there, okay, let me flip this. Is there something that you've ever found yourself stuck with, like juggernaut, and you've thought, actually, you know what? I don't want that anymore.
That's a really, really great question. Tell you, this is so great. Thank you for asking this question because I'm out to really alter it a little bit, this pattern I have about this. So, at some point in my late 30s, I realized that I had given up a desire and a want to design for theater and pursued fashion. And in that, if I didn't do something, start saying something, start creating something in costume design, I would probably never do anything. And so I started doing that. And before I knew it, was doing a lot of local theater costume design. And so lately I've been looking at how do I alter that now? So it is a matter of I got stuck with that was the best thing I would ever done. That was the pinnacle. And now anything else doesn't really match up to that. And nothing has.
Hmm.
So
Something like just the very idea of that.
I said it, I spoke it, I would say it to people. Oh, that was the highlight of my career and like in terms of costume design. But I never started to really create anything like what was next. So that's what I'm creating now. Like whatever that next thing that is going to be is that's the next thing. So it's like we can get stuck with something like a thought or a way that we relate to something. But again, at any moment, you can, and it stops. It stopped something. But in any moment, you could pick it up again. And you could say, you don't have to be stuck with, oh, that was it.
Yeah.
No, now I can create something else and I can pick it up again. It's this capacity that human beings have to stop and to start again. We don't really relate to it like that.
Okay, so what I heard was something like people talking about, you speak it and the universe will give it to you, um, which I've never been much of a guy that way, a thought process that way. But yet at the same time, I do believe in the power of speaking things, and not
Yes.
always knowing what the power of them is. And in this case, you're talking. What I'm hearing is you said this, and isn't it funny how your brain took it as that, and you found it to be true since then?
Yeah. Well, consider too that given that that was the pinnacle,
Yes.
there wasn't much else I was talking about. So I wasn't the more we talk about something, the more life we give it.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
why be mindful of what you're complaining about. See, if you're complaining a lot about something, you're keeping it into existence because you're
Yes.
talking about it a lot. If you
Yeah.
really want to have that complaint disappear, try saying something else.
Okay, that's got to be confusing. I now you and I have had this conversation, so
Mhm.
I know it. But can you say something more about that? Because most people are probably listening right now, going, "What do you mean, say something else?"
Well, so there's kind of a mild complaint that I have that I'm never going to really do another big piece of theater,
Yeah.
right? It's mild, but it's like there's nothing happening. I'm not connecting with people that are in that realm.
Yeah.
I'm not meeting new people. I'm not sometimes not saying anything about it is just like another way of complaining about it. I'm not talking about it. But if I really wanted to create something about it, I would do like I'm doing now. Tell you that that's something I'm up to. It's something I want to create. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know when that's going to happen. I could say this because I could say, like, within the next 5 years, there's going to be a piece of theater that I'm going to be involved with. That's me speaking it into the universe, into your
Hmm.
listening. You're the universe,
Yes.
into your listening, into why it's listening, into the
Yes.
recording here. That is something I'm creating,
Yeah.
and it lives right now in my speaking.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I'm creating that.
Yeah. I I know in this world of business and leadership. I mean, we're talking about leadership here and leading yourself. I know that one of the things I've learned is that the conversations that you involve yourself in are that's the direction that you're going to go. And so choose your conversation wisely.
Mhm.
Do you have any thoughts on that as it pertains to leading yourself to in these different areas that matter to us, health, wealth, happiness, can you say something about that?
I think what I'd like to say about that, to see how I can tie it back to health and wealth and like all of that,
Yeah.
is that I noticed this whole.
Being the leader
Mhm,
in your own life,
mhm.
something like that. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that the times that I wanted to create more money,
Yes.
it was always from a looking at where could I be of service? Where could I bring what I bring to the world into the world? Where can I create opportunities to bring what I bring into the world and have that be something that would reward me? I was never really interested in going after the money. Not that I didn't need it at times, but it wasn't the focus. The focus was how could I do what I do and love to do and love to be paid for and do it well? How could I do that? Because I knew that that would give me wealth. And I, not just monetary, but wealth.
Yeah.
So there were times when I would really like play with, like test it out, like experiment. If I would ask for opportunities, like, and I literally mean ask for, like ask the universe, literally like standing out, I'm like, I want an opportunity to do something that I love to do and that makes a difference for people. And then I would just notice it coming in the form of a job, in the form of an offer, like that. I would test it out. And there were times that I never asked for those things and those things didn't come. I don't mean for it to be quite so woo woo, but I I think like anything, if you're willing if you're willing to believe it's possible, then maybe it is. I think I've just
I
been willing to believe it is.
yeah. I think that's probably the number one key to leadership, to in your own life. You have to believe in that as a possibility.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah, you're shaking your
yeah.
head with something there. What's
It's
bubbling
it's
up for you?
it's it's like if I really look at all of those times that I wanted something to happen and I believed in that could happen, like it was possible, it happened.
Hmm.
It happened. I said I wanted to, create theater on a big stage. I thought it was going to be Broadway. I didn't realize it was going to be in Germany, but it was a big stage. It was a world stage, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
always look quite the way we think, but when you really look at it, it is exactly what it is we asked for. It never looks the way I think it should look. But then that's how I am about everything, right? Like I should look different than I look, right? Like, things never look
Yeah.
the way I think they should look, but they
Yeah.
often look the way that they are. And when I can be with how they are, I can see all the perfection in it.
Yeah, that's a, a larger conversation.
Mm.
I think there is some great wisdom that you've just put. Man, we need
That's
another hour to explore that part.
Neil, I am grateful for this. I'm grateful for you having me doing some of the looking too.
What I do want to leave for everyone here, because we've run out of time and we've actually gone over already. What I
Mm.
want to put out there is, how do people, if they want to get more of you, if they for all the brides that are going crazy and they're like, I want to check out these dresses, um or for people that want more exposure to you, how does someone get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
My email, I guess. I don't have a website. Peter DeFreitas joy at gmail.com. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the
that
of
really is the power of of leadership. If you're good at that, then you'll be able to pass on through word of mouth. You will never, the best branding. It's the best branding out there, right? So
anything that I've ever loved or anything that I've ever really believed in or anything that I've ever really like enjoyed so much and I wanted to share it with people. I
Yeah.
do it.
Wow. Well, Peter, I definitely want to continue this conversation. Maybe
Mhm.
another time when we can look into it some more, and maybe we can get some questions even from some of the listeners and try to address some of those. And
So,
I I thought your voice was great as we
yay.
recorded it today. Peter, thank you very much for coming on the show. Guys, we were grateful to have you listening and being with us today on this conversation. I know a little bit more ethereal, perhaps a little bit more thought involved out there, but thanks, guys. We'll see you again